Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, we are talking about Witchcrafters, and more specifically, some of their basic combos. So, as you can see, I've already kind of set up my hand and the grave, and most of this is just to kind of explain all of the cards and what they do, but yeah. Let's just kind of hop into how the deck itself works. So first and foremost, the normal summon is pretty important for this deck. The reason for that is because all of your normal summons, Pittore, Schmieta, Potterie, Genni, all four of them have an effect where they contribute themselves as well as sending a spell to the grave, or sorry, discarding a spell to the grave in order to summon out any of the Witchcrafters from the deck. So here I'm just going to explain this with the Schmieta. So we're going to send this to the grave. I'm also going to send the Pot of Prosperity here. Your extra deck doesn't really matter, so things like Pot of Prosperity and Pot of Extravagance don't really matter all that much. But here we are able to go into our boss monsters. There are two boss monsters for the archetype. We have the first one, Haine. Haine does two things. Notably, it protects from targeting all of your other spellcaster type monsters, which your entire archetype is spellcaster types, cannot be targeted with card effects. So, pretty nice. Also, you can discard a spell card, then target a face-up card your opponent controls, and destroy it. So, any of these spells will work. I have these in here for a specific reason, which we will talk about in a little, but yeah. You just use any spell, you discard it, and then you pop a face-up card. Really solid. It does target, though, which is notable, but it's not too terrible. We also have things like Holiday, which can special summon from the grave. So, let's say we activated the Holiday there, we would be able to bring out the Madame Verre. So, Madame Verre is the second boss monster, and we kind of have the third boss monster in our hand, but it's not really a boss monster, and I'll explain that in a little. But Madame Verre, what this card does is during damage calculation, if a spellcaster type monster battles an opponent's monster, you can reveal any number of spells with different names in your hand, and then the battling monster gains 1,000 attack and defense for each card revealed. So if I were to reveal these three differently named spells, and my Haine was being attacked, it would boost up all the way to 5,400 attack, which is quite quite extensive. Quite. It's large. She's big. So that is also done during damage calculation, which not a lot of things can respond to. If, for example, they have an effect negation or something like that, they can't actually respond to it. So, if you're in damage calculation, feel free to fire that off. Most things can't respond to it. I think spell speed 3 can, but most other things cannot. Unless it is something else that also activates during the damage calculation. Like, for example, Melodious Score, I know does. There's a few other things. I don't really know too much. But yeah, I guess like Forbidden Chalice, I think could as well. So do be aware of that. Moving on, we have its secondary effect where you can discard a spell. All of the spellcasters or all of the Witchcrafters, I should say, have an effect where they discard a spell. And then you can negate the effect of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls. So with these two on the field, which is normally what you are going to try to end on, your end board should look like something like this, as well as a few spells either on the field or in the hand. Yeah, the reason this is so good, it's because it's a blanket, non-targeting effect negation. So, you can actually negate the effect of Dragoon, right? Dragoon is pretty good, right? It's a pretty good card. Granted, it's banned in the OCG as well as in Master Duel, but in the TCG, it is not banned. So, do keep that in mind. Let's talk about Aruru. Golem Aruru. What does this card do? Well, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a spellcaster type monster, or when it is targeted for an attack, you can special summon this guy by returning a card your opponent controls or returning a Witchcrafter spell or just a spell to your hand. So you either return something to the hand that your opponent has, or you return one of your spells in the grave. Very, very nice. It allows you to also special summon this. So, yeah. It's just nice to have. It's a big body. It does return to your hand during the standby phase, but it is just added interruption, right? If they interrupt you, you get to interrupt them. That's mostly what it does. And since it does return to the hand, it is very nice to have, right? Say, for example, if it's your turn and they activate something that targets, you special summon this, then you can get that extra damage in and then just return it to the hand for the follow-up turn. Very nice. All right, let's quickly talk about all of the Witchcrafter spells. So all of the spells have a special effect where they will actually do something, right? So, for example, Holiday here will target a Witchcrafter monster in the graveyard and special summon it. All of them have some sort of effect. Creation searches a monster. Draping will return spells and traps up to the number of Witchcrafters you have. Bystreet will protect your monsters from destruction. Scroll will allow you to draw a card if you destroy it by battle. Collaboration gives you a second attack and an Ancient Gear-like effect. And then Confusion allows you to fusion summon. This card is exclusive to the OCG, but I would imagine it comes to Master Duel as well as the TCG at some point, so I decided to include it. So all of them have some sort of unique effect. However, they all share an effect as well. They will all recur themselves, either back to the hand or back onto the field with the continuous spells. They will all put themselves back into your possession if you control a Witchcrafter and you haven't used their first effect that turn. So, if you discard a card for something like Haine's effect, oh my gosh, I will never be able to say that right, or Madame Verre's effect, or any of these other monsters' effects, they will just bring themselves back to the hand, right? If you didn't end up actually using Holiday to bring back a Verre, you can add it to the hand, right? If you didn't end up actually searching out a monster, you can just add it back to the hand. This is where the archetype gets really good. And this is why in Master Duel specifically, you want to play a 60-card variant with That Grass Looks Greener. Being able to mill a whole bunch of cards and then just get them back in the end phase anyway is insane advantage. It's incredibly useful and it allows you to have a whole bunch more cards than your opponent, which is really nice. So yeah, there's that. As for the continuous spells, let me quickly state what these do. They're slightly different, at least the Witchcrafter ones. So let's just, yeah, these basically act as spells in the hand for any of the Witchcrafter effects. So if you were to activate a Witchcrafter monster's effect that would discard to activate an effect, you could send this card from the field to the graveyard instead. So any of the normal summonable monsters, so for example a Schmieta, or any of these other level 4 or lower monsters, as well as the effects of Haine and Madame Verre, all of those work. So you just discard this guy. So again, if it's on the field, it's basically as if it's in the hand. The only difference is you can't actually activate them and like reveal them for Madame Verre, so you don't get the attack boost during damage calculation unless you specifically have a spell in hand. Do keep that in mind. It doesn't come up all that often. Most of the time you just want the effect and negation. Anyway, 2800, 2400 is normally pretty big. It's not the biggest, but like even if you have just one spell in hand, it's oftentimes enough. But yeah. Also, do note, all of these effects have a hard once per turn. Everything is hard once per turns on everything. So again, even the spells have a hard once per turn. You can only activate them once, with one exception. There is a way to activate spells twice, and that is with Genni. So all of the monsters have all of the level 4 or lower monsters have a graveyard effect. Genni's is probably the most important. As I mentioned, you basically get to copy another spell and activate its effect again by banishing it as well as Genni from the graveyard in order to activate it. So say I wanted to search out a card, what I would do is I would banish the Genni and I would banish the creation in order to activate the effect and search out a monster. And since it is only copying the effect, it is not actually activating the card, you do get to activate it twice. Very similar to the Dark Lords in how they work, where you're just copying the effect, not the cost. So here I'm going to actually just end up searching this guy, and we'll talk about this one in a little, but yeah, that's how all of the spells basically work. They're all very simple. They just have a floating effect, more or less. Moving on to the other Witchcrafter level 4 or lower monsters. We have Potterie, which banishes itself in order to... if you have no cards in your hand, first and foremost, you can banish it from your graveyard to target a Witchcrafter card and add it to your hand. So we can banish this, and then we can add like the Haine to hand or something like that, right? Maybe I wanted to add the collaboration or what have you, right? Potterie, it banishes itself in order to draw a card. So we're going to draw a card. I don't know if I've shuffled. And then it will send a card to the graveyard. A Witchcrafter card, specifically. If you do not have a Witchcrafter card, your entire hand gets banished. So, normally you only run 2 of this card because it is very dependent on the other cards in your hand. However, if you end up going, or if it's like the second turn, your second turn specifically, so either turn 3 or 4, then it can be pretty good because you've already recurred the advantage. You've already gotten your Witchcrafter spells back to your hand, and you could just activate that, and it's basically a free +1. So we're gonna send this guy to the grave. There we go. Yeah, and then Schmieta has the second most important effect, arguably the first. I said Genni was very important, but this one's equally as important. It sends a Witchcrafter card to the graveyard. So say, for example, you didn't have Genni, but you had a bunch of spells in the graveyard, you could instead send your Genni to the grave. Or, you know, if you wanted to, you could send your Patronus, you could send any of your cards, right? Any of your Witchcrafter cards. So I'm going to send Genni here, since I have everything else in the grave. So yeah, just sends anything there. Moving on, we have, let's talk about the traps real quick. So, Masterpiece, it does have an on-field effect. It's pretty bad, but if you control a Witchcrafter monster, you could target a spell in your graveyard and then add one with the same name from your deck to your hand. So, say for example, you had a Holiday in your grave, you could add a Holiday and then it'd go to the grave. It's okay, but it's not what it's used for. It's used for its graveyard effect. So, most of the time, you're going to want to mill this or send it off of Schmieta or something along those lines. You can banish this card and any number of spells from your graveyard in order to special summon a Witchcrafter monster from your deck whose levels equal the number of spells banished to activate this effect. It's a little confusing. Let me explain. Basically, what I can do is I can banish this, and then any number of spells. Let's banish 4. Or you know what? Let's banish 7. How many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now, oh, hold on. Sorry, hold on. This has to be in the deck. And now I can special summon out Haine. So, there you go. Bada bing, bada boom. Now I'm able to special summon a monster. I could also just banish 1 and special summon out Genni. So it's very, very useful. You could play it out more, but the thing is, oftentimes, if you end up needing it more than once, you're probably losing that duel, right? Normally, it's not to get you back into the game, but in order to get you into a more commanding position, right? To get out your Verre, to get out your Haine, or to get out your follow-up for the next turn, right? Your normal summon is pretty important, but it's not absolutely necessary, right? If you don't end up drawing a normal summonable monster, that's normally where you're going to want to have Masterpiece, right? I would say use it during the end phase, though, in case you don't already have one in your hand. Drawing one's going to be kind of problematic, right? Just get a Witchcrafter on the field as often as you can. Okay, one last card to talk about in the grave. We have Patronus. Patronus, you can, if it's set in your spell and trap card zone, what you could do is you could target one of your Witchcrafter monsters, your Spellcaster monsters, that is banished or in the graveyard, shuffle it into the deck, and then add a Witchcrafter spell from your deck to your hand. So what I can do is I can go like this. I can say, hey, I want this Schmieta back into the deck. So I'll put it into the deck, and then I will add myself a... stop. I will add myself a creation, right? And then I could just literally search that same card. But now I have the creation in hand. Right, I swear we'll talk about these. So, pretty solid. However, not only does it have an on-field effect, it has a graveyard effect. You can banish this card, Target any number of banished Witchcrafter spells with different names, add them to your hand. So, how many Witchcrafter spells did we end up banishing? Oh, whoops, I accidentally added it to the hand. Whoops, I meant to banish it. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You can add a lot of cards to your hand with this effect. Oftentimes you don't need to. Adding 1 or 2 is enough, especially since we are playing 3 of this card. I would highly suggest playing 3. It's really not bad. Even if you draw it, you can set it, and then you still get to add advantage to your hand constantly. And then all of these can be utilized with, Haine's effect. I could pop a card, send a card to the graveyard if I could figure out where that was. I can negate an effect, sending the collaboration this time. All of this is very good advantage. So, yeah, as I said, all good. Let me put all of these into the grave, except for this one. So, confusion is a fusion. You fuse. That's the point of confusion. So what is the fusion monster for Witchcrafter? Well, let's send these cards to the grave, as you would in order to fusion summon. And we are going to special summon out the fusion monster. Now, as I mentioned, both confusion and the fusion monster are OCG exclusive, but I'm still going to talk about them because eventually I imagine them coming to Master Duel as well as the TCG. So, what does this card do? When a non-fusion spellcaster type of monster activates its effect, or a spell card or effect is activated, you can activate one of these effects. So basically, anytime you activate one of your effects for Witchcrafters, you're able to activate one of these effects. However, it is a hard once per turn. Do keep that in mind. You could destroy a card in the field. Pretty good. Non-targeting, by the way, meaning you can get around a lot of those cards that have target protection and just destroy them. Or you can force your opponent to activate something, like, for example, one of their set trap cards, in order to force it out before you even target it. So, very solid. And it can catch your opponent surprised sometimes. You can special summon a level 6 or lower Witchcrafter monster from your hand or deck. I don't know if there even is a level 6. I'm not going to lie. I never have played a level 6. But, I mean, there are level 5 and lower, all of which have good effects. As we've seen, Schmieta has a really good graveyard effect, etc., etc. You can add a Witchcrafter spell or trap from your graveyard to your hand. Pretty self-explanatory. Just recur the advantage. Very, very nice. Now, do keep in mind one more thing with the graveyard effects as well as the on-field effects. The graveyard effects and the on-field effects can be used in the same turn. So if I activate Schmieta here, we'll send this guy to the graveyard, and we'll send, well, I'll just not send anything, it's fine. I can still activate this again in the... Let me click... Oh my gosh, let me click the thing. Holy crap. I could still banish this and then send another card, right? If I haven't already used that effect to banish and send a card, I'd still be able to send one. So, whoops, I accidentally banished this. I meant to send it to the grave. It's fine. So yeah, that is one really good thing about Witchcrafters. Now, quickly, there is a secondary engine that is in this deck, and it's called the Magician's Engine. Or, it's the Magician's Engine. So, Magician Restage is the heart and soul of this, and I play 3 in the Grass That's Greener variant. The reason for this is because when it is sent to the graveyard... Let me read this card! Okay, well, when it is sent to the graveyard, you can add a Magician continuous spell card from your deck to your hand. Also, you can target a level 3 or lower spellcaster type monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So, it's just a monster reborn for, like, your Genni and stuff. So, very, very nice. Just getting you more monsters. However, as I said, the actual effect that you use most of the time is when it's sent to the graveyard. And if it's just if it's sent in any way, as long as it hits the graveyard, you're able to search out the Magician's right hand as well as or the Magician's left hand. Now, notably, you can search both if 2 of your Magician's Restage is sent to the grave. So if 2 of them are sent, you're able to search out both of them. But yeah. Why are these so good? Well, if you control a spellcaster type monster, you negate the first activation of the first spell card, or you negate the first trap card that is activated each turn. Very, very good. If you're playing against trap-heavy decks, this card can force them to activate something. It's very scary. And in fact, I had an opponent where they had to... I basically forced them to activate their Tri-Brigade Revolt, which is really bad when it's for this card. So, you know, it's pretty good. Also, just negating a spell card is incredibly good. Especially if you go first, you're able to basically force them to have multiple spells for them to play through. So, all in all, very, very solid. Now, let's quickly talk about some of the combos that you can do. Alright, so I'm basically going to be showing you a couple of test hands here, and this first one, I have Grass Set Screener. This is very important. It's a very, very solid card. Mill 55. Oh, right. We'll just mill... Oh, I don't know how this works. Mill 20. There we go. That doesn't work. I will figure this out. Mill 10? Okay, there we go. Okay, so Grass Set Screener, this is why this card is broken, because I literally just got a whole bunch of advantage off of this. So first and foremost, let's look at what we ended up sending. Notably, we sent 1, 2, 3 Witchcrafter spells. However, 2 of them are of the same name. We sent 2 different Patronus. We also were able to send a Schmieta and a Potterie. Potterie is not nearly as useful, but, I mean, we did send it. We have Haine as well. It being in the grave is very nice because we can special summon it from there with Holiday. We also have Golem. It being in the grave kind of sucks, but it's not that big of a deal. We also sent a Restage. Restage is very nice because immediately it's going to activate, and we are going to be able to search out one of our Magician's cards. We also sent another Magician card, but that's not that big of a deal. So let us add the Magician's Right Hand. Obviously, it's a spell. It's going to be better to just negate spells. What else did we end up sending? Metalfoes Fusion. So here we go. We can activate this. We can... Oh, sorry. I gotta put this back into the top of the deck. No. To the top of the deck. There we go. And then we will shuffle and then draw a card. I should have drawn, then put it into the deck and shuffled. No, wait. No, you shuffle it into the deck and then you draw a card. Okay, so, yeah, we're good. So here we have Witchcrafter Creation. So we're going to go for Creation here. We're going to search out one of our monsters. I like getting Schmieta. It really depends on what other cards you have in your hand. We already have, or in your grave as well. We already have, notably, a Schmieta in grave, but we don't have a Genni. Genni is really important to have. Again, it copies effects. It's very nice to have. I could get a second search here, or I could get a second special summon. It's very nice. And since we have Patronus, I'm going to go for Genni here. So we're going to end up searching out the Genni. I'm going to add it to the hand. And then we're just going to immediately normal summon this. So activate its effect. We are going to tribute it off. And since it tributes, it does dodge a lot of different things. And it is a quick effect, so you can even do this during your opponent's turn. Just as long as it's during the main phase, you tribute it off for one of the other cards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So we're going to send that to the grave, and I'm going to send the... we'll send... that's a good question. I'm going to send this Restage here to the grave, because that would also get us another search. But anyway, Genni is going to activate, and we are going to we are going to special summon out... so we already have Haine in the grave, so I'm going to special summon out the Verre. And then I'm also going to search out the Magician's left hand. So at this point, we have one half of the 2 cards, basically, that we want in the or on the field. The only other thing that we would want is to somehow get the Aruru onto the field or into the hand. Either way is pretty nice, just to give us that extra interruption. So how are we going to achieve that? First of all, we have this Holiday in hand. I'm just going to slap that down. We are going to then special summon out our Haine. Then this goes to grave. And then we are going to copy the effect of the Holiday, and we are going to banish with the Genni, and then banish the Holiday in order to special summon out our Aruru. So now we have in rotation Aruru, we have a Haine on field, as well as a Verre, and then we have 3 spells in hand. We're going to slap down 2 of these immediately, just because it is more useful to have them to just immediately negate, rather than for the effects of our Witchcrafters. Because again, we still have some Witchcrafter spells in here that will recur themselves. As well as we have Patronus, so in fact I'm just going to activate this now, and we are going to add back this Holiday. So now we have a Holiday in hand as well as the creation. Very, very nice. And then at this point, we're basically done. We have an Ash Blossom as well. So during the end phase, what I'm going to do is we are going to recur our advantage. So we're going to have the Bystreet just come back. And I believe that's the only other thing that we are able to activate there. Yeah, since we've already activated the Holiday, it doesn't actually come back to the hand. It's just going to sit there in the grave. That's not a whole lot you can do. But with the Bystreet adding that protection from destruction, as well as Haine protecting from targeting other than itself, and then the other 2 spells in hand and the negation, this is a very, very formidable board. This is also why Grass That's Greener is banned. That was insane. The fact that I was able to occur that much advantage is really solid. Also, during the opponent's standby phase, this guy is going to go back to the hand, so then whenever anything gets targeted, it just comes right back out and bounces one of their cards. Or, you know, if I really needed an extra spell, like for example, they're playing Blue Eyes, and they're playing the Chaos Max Dragon package, what I can do is I can add like Holiday or something like that to my hand to boost up just in case. I don't know why you would do that most of the time. You could just target and return a card if you want to that way. But yeah, there you go. That's a pretty self-explanatory idea of the combo. Alright, so real quick, I just wanted to give you a quick tip on how this deck might work. So, as I mentioned earlier, all of your level 4s have a quick effect where during the main phase, they contribute this themselves in order to special summon a Witchcrafter by sending a spell as well. So they tribute themselves, send a spell, and then special summon a Witchcrafter. So this can be incredibly useful to dodge effects, or just to bait something out, right? Force them to actually activate something or what have you, right? So say Haine here activates their effect, they're going to try and pop our card, but we are in the main phase, more specifically. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tribute this card, going to send it to the grave, as well as we'll say collaboration. Doesn't really matter. As long as it's a spell, I'm still able to do that. So we're going to send this spell to the graveyard. We will then just special summon, and that dodges the effect. Our monster is off the field, the targeting effect is no longer targeted on the monster, and therefore we are still able to go out into Verre and be protected, or, you know, get our monster onto the field. So sometimes what you can do is, say you don't have your Verre on the field, or your Haine on the field during the end phase of your turn. That's not that big of a deal, because again, during the main phase, if we have any of the level 4 or lower monsters on the field, let me just send that to the grave, and say we still have, like, we have the Bystreet in there, and we do have this in hand, and maybe we have some other things on the field as well. It doesn't really matter all that much, but yeah. Say we've gotten a whole bunch of activations of our spells and our traps, or whatever it may be, our monsters in the grave. We can still end on a board that is basically just 1 or 2 monsters. Maybe we have 2, you know. Maybe we have Potterie, and we special summon that instead from, like, a Holiday, right? So say this is our board. During the main phase, we can still just activate this. Maybe they want to go to battle real quick. We could just go, I'm going to just send this card to the graveyard. Eventually I'll see it. And then, you know, I'm still going to just special summon out that Verre, you know, or maybe this time I'll go for Haine, right? Maybe I want to pop their card instead, right? And I can do both of these guys' effects as well. So just send them to the graveyard as much as I need to. I can search out more cards. I can add more cards. And this is during the opponent's turn as well. So again, you can dodge effects that are targeted, or you can simply just switch out the monsters that are currently on the field, right? So if you didn't, you know, you had to use all of your spells just to get a Witchcrafter onto the field, and then you can get them back during the end phase, do that, right? And then, again, you know, you could still end on this board pretty easily. It's very nice. All right. Let's say that your board during the end phase is just this. It is a Genni and a Magician's Right Hand. As long as you are able to recur one of these spells, you should be all right to switch into one of your other monsters, right? It does allow you a little bit of protection. It's not great, but it is something. So I'm going to add 2 of these spells to the hand. Oh, I accidentally, whoops. We'll just do this. It's fine. But yeah, here we can still, during the main phase, we can activate the Genni. We'll send something off. Doesn't really matter. And then we can still go into our Verre. Or we can go into Haine. I like Verre a little bit more if I'm on a low resource board, right? If it's something like this that I'm ending on, it's much better to go for Verre than Haine. The reason for that is because it has a blanket-wide monster negation, right? That is much better than a singular pop, especially when it is a singular targeted pop, right? So, again, much better to go for Verre as a defensive option. So, yeah, that's basically it. There isn't a whole lot more that you can actually do with the Witchcrafter line. It's very simple. It's mostly about getting Haine, sorry, I keep mixing up the name, Haine and Verre onto the field. Those are the 2 things that you want to have, and then just constantly recurring the advantage from your spells. Just, if you're able to get it back into your hand, do that. If you're able to get it back onto the field, do that. That is entirely useful. However, do keep in mind one of 2 things. Well, one thing. Keep in mind this one thing. You can end up with a lot of spells on the field. Make sure that you keep one area open at the very least so that you can activate your spells. You have a lot of continuous spells in this archetype and in this strategy, right? You're playing the Magician's stuff, you're playing the Witchcrafter stuff, all of them are continuous, so you do really need to keep in mind that sometimes you may need at least one more space open, just in case, you know, you want to go for game with collaboration, or you need to special summon a monster back with holiday. Do keep that in mind. Do not clog up your board. Otherwise, you will kind of be forced to use something maybe at an inopportune moment, right? Say you have to use the Verre effect in order to send something just to clear out the space for another spell. You don't really want to have to do that. You do want to keep those cards on field if you can. So yeah, that's basically it. That's all the tips and tricks I have. I hope that this helped at least somewhat, but it's pretty simple. Once you learn how it actually works, it's a very simple deck. It's just kind of reading your cards and knowing what they do. So yeah, hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much appreciated. And if you want to check out more content like this, as well as more Yu-Gi-Oh, then just be sure to subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.